Video goes over the conversion settings of the buyer record. Now, to remind you, the way TrackDrive works is you have conversion settings in each buyer record, and that's how much the buyer will pay you for a call, the revenue you're going to receive from a call. The traffic source, or your publisher's payout that you'll give to them, is set in the offers. So there are two separate places that you do your conversion settings, one for revenue you're going to receive and one for payouts that you're going to give to any publishers. I'm going to go over the conversion settings for a buyer here. Now, the buyer conversion settings should always be 24/7. Even if you have to do day parting and say, okay, from 9 to 5 or 9 to midnight I have a special thing, and from midnight to 5 I have a special thing, but in the middle you make it all 24/7. So you always want to cover 24/7. I oftentimes see this mistake made, that someone will set up a hourly time like this, that they're open from 8 to noon and 2 to 5 each day and can take 50, and they're open from noon to 2 for lunch, only can take 25, then after 5 p.m. till 9 they can take 10. That's great. You do not need to make this match this at all. This is just saying down here, at what time of any time of day, how much would this guy pay me for calls? Now, normally it's the same revenue all the time, but there are some verticals that early morning hours and late evening hours, late evening hours, they need to either make you wait longer to get paid, to have the call last longer, or maybe they pay you less per call for whatever reason, but during the heart of the day you're going to get paid more. And that you can do that, but you should always cover 24/7, so that as you add hours up here, you already have how much you're going to get paid handled down here. Now, I'm going to edit the record, the conversion settings that we set up for you. This is the static revenue. I'm going to show you. We do allow ping post, where you can ping the buyer and say, hey, can you take this call with some data? They'll respond back with one or multiple places to route calls to and how much you could get paid, and we'll automatically put those child buyers into the routing of the offer just on that one call, so that we can add those, route those calls to those buyers. But I'm going to go over static revenue. This one says default revenue. Whenever I use the word default, that means I have no filters, which means it's just going to work for, as the default. I might add something else, and I'll show you that here. So by default, I'm going to get paid this. So let's say I'm going to get paid $25 at 60 seconds. I'm going to not get paid for the same consumer, same caller ID. After I get paid by this buyer for that, I won't get paid for another 30 days if I keep sending the same caller to that buyer. So that's what dedupe means. Now, for real-time bidding, which you may or not use, you're going to tell the system, if I do let this buyer change his price himself, I'm going to let him change his price 25 cents at a time, and the minimum he can pay is 25. That's what I already agreed to, but I'll let him go up to 35. Now, you could have this be less, 20, and he could move his price down, but I usually see people say, he's already agreed to 25, I'll leave him at 25 minimum, and he can bid himself up to 35. Now, the extra tokens here, a good example is if you're trying to update steps or goals, and steps is for link trust, and goals are for has offers and things like that. You can add the extra tokens. Because this conversion happened, we need to add some data to the webhook that's going to go to those tracking platforms. I would define that information here for the webhook. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and update that, and then I'm going to add more conversion criteria. Now, maybe this guy really likes one of your publishers and he's willing to pay more for those calls. So I'll come in here and I'll say traffic sources for higher pay, whatever you want to name it. So I'm going to come in here, and let's say he's told me, because he loves their calls, that when the traffic source equals Janet Yeager or Rich Nolan, he loves those guys. Everyone loves Rich Nolan. He loves those guys, and he's willing to pay more. So I can go ahead and filter in those buyers. Now, if I need the extra tokens to tell one of those systems, hey, this conversion setting happened, I'd set that there too. But I go in here and say, okay, he agreed to 30 on these, same duration, same dedupe time frame, and I'm still going to let him change his price 25 cents at a time, $30 minimum, and he can go up to 40, let's say. Okay, so now I got that. Now, On a future release here, it will automatically put the no filter, the default one, at the bottom, because it is important to realize for things that we have duplicate settings for, when TrackDrive is looking for which one to use, it starts looking from top down to find matching filters and says, that's the thing I should use. So in this situation, it would come down, have no filters, and say, I can use this one, and it would pay you $25 for every single call. It would never see that you had special pricing for Janet and Rich. If I put it in the right order, and again, this should start happening on a future release by itself, but if you're setting up before we do that, make sure your default options are always at the bottom. So the ones with no filters are at the bottom, so that when we're looking for the conversion to use when the call's over, we come down, we say, was this Janet or Rich? Nope. Okay, you can fit this because there's no filters on this, and we can use that. So that's real important here, but that is how you set up your conversion settings. And if you have special revenue you can get from a buyer by state or by traffic source or whatever, you would just filter it, and we'd use that when the call's done. Just so you know, we do always check to see if the buyer converted first before we start looking at the conversion settings in the offer, because we can say that the conversion settings in the offer for the publisher, the traffic source, are dependent upon the buyer converting as well. So just so you know, we do check this first before we start checking conversion settings after the call for the traffic source.